Hello everyone, glad you're joining me. In this video, I am going to be primarily sharing with you some formulas that will allow you to turn fruits into a sugar substitute or any other sweetener substitute. This is sort of a part 2 or follow-up video from a video I did a little while back that was about sugar and other sweeteners and how to bake sweet things that are healthy. So primarily in this video, I'm going to be giving you those formulas or little mini recipes that will allow you to do that. I do want to say something that after doing the first video, I kind of kicked myself for not sharing. I meant to, so I'm going to start off with that. But I do want to say that although this video is its own video and you could watch this video only or the other video only, there was a lot of information in the other videos, so you may want to check that out. What I wanted to share was that my observation and experience is that in this culture that I am in this time, I have seen and believe that most people have some sort of guilt or shame emotion attached to wanting to eat sweet foods or craving them. And this is really, what is the term that I want to use? There's no reason to, because for one thing, it's natural. We have taste bud zones on our tongue, and one of them is to detect sweet food. There are a lot of foods that are healthy for us that are sweet. This also is important because it allows us, by taste alone, to determine whether fruit is overripe or rotten, or if it's underripe. So this is important, the sweet taste bud zone, and it is perfectly normal and natural and healthy for you to want to eat sweet foods, because many of the foods that are healthy for us are in fact sweet. So, without further ado, a couple little tips for these. I think that people should approach this, while these are formulas, I think people should approach this as more of an art than an exact science, and understand that there's gonna probably be a little bit of learning, a little bit of failing and success in your experience with this if you stick with it. For one thing, some people like things to taste sweeter than others, so this formula in that way is more of an art, but also depending on what you're making, using a little more or a little less of something may be beneficial to the recipe. And also figuring out which fruits you want to use in which recipes may be something to learn over time. For instance, there's a number of them here, and you may start off using dates to sweeten banana bread, and then find out that you prefer the taste of using figs to sweeten your banana bread. Everybody's got different tastes in that respect. We need to use a little bit of thought and, although I hate to use this phrase, but common sense in our flavor combinations. You don't want to use something like papaya in banana bread unless you're okay with it having a slight papaya taste, for example. So, a couple other little notes. You may need to reduce the other liquids in your recipes when you make syrups or pastes out of these fruits to adjust for that. If your recipe calls for a dry sweetener such as sugar, you may need to reduce the liquid some. Again, art, not science, but the general rule for this is to reduce the liquids up to a fourth cup per cup of puree that you use. Another thing to be aware of is some of these may cook a little faster than they would if you were using different sweeteners, and they are apt to not rise as high. Especially true when the original recipe calls for sugar and has yeast in it, because the yeast will not have as much to feed on when you are using fruit instead, and thus it will not rise as high. This is normal. It doesn't affect the taste. It's, I don't think of it as inferior. It's simply different. So, once you adjust to that, that could be your new normal. Okay. So, some things that you can use: papaya, bananas, apples, pears. Really, you can probably use a lot more than I am naming. I would think just about any sweet fruit. Obviously, you don't want to use lemons to sweeten. But anything that's sweet, I think would really work, provided you're okay with the flavor combination that it's going to create. Sorry, everyone. So I'm going to give you a few little formulas here. Now, for most of these, this is a 1-to-1 ratio, which means if there's 1 cup sugar in a recipe, you will replace it with 1 cup of whatever puree I'm talking about. If I say otherwise, then it's otherwise, but if I don't, then that's the rule of how to do this. So the first one I have in my notes here is figs. You can make a fig puree by combining 8 ounces of fresh figs and, depending on how liquidy you want it, a 1/4 cup to 1/3 cup of water in a blender, and puree that until it's smooth. But backtracking a little, before you do that, you want to soak the figs until they become soft. So step 1 would be soak 8 ounces of figs. Step 2 would be to put it in a blender with between a 1/4 cup and a 1/3 cup of water and blend it. You can also use this to replace some of the fat in a recipe, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So you can use this to replace 100% of sugar in a recipe. You can also add more water to this and make it into a liquid sweetener if your recipe calls for a liquid sweetener like agave or honey. Or if you would like to have a fig syrup for pancakes or any sort of recipe like that, you could try it in your coffee or tea or something like that in replacement of honey or sugar. I have not tried this. I don't know how it tastes. I will be making some date syrup next week. I'm very excited. And dates are next on my list. For dates, it's about the same thing. It can substitute up to a cup of sugar in any recipe, which means that if your recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar, you may want to only use 1 cup of the date puree and use something else for the other cup, perhaps some figs, a fig syrup. Or make half a batch and then later make the other half. You could certainly try it with 2, but the notes are suggesting they don't want to stand by it. So anyhow, to do this, you want to either have already pitted dates or you want to pit them yourself, which is really easy. You do want to take them out of the refrigerator if they've been in the refrigerator for a little while. Allow them to warm up enough so you can work with them with your hands. It's really easy to do though. You just kind of pull the dates apart and take the fig out. I mean, the pit out. Sorry. So you would puree 1 cup of pitted dates with a half a cup to 1 cup of warm water until a thick paste is made. And again, you can add more water to get a syrup out of this. Bananas is the next one I have. You can use a blender, but if you don't feel like it, you can just mash them up really well. So again, it says that they can be substituted for up to 1 cup of sugar in your recipes, and if you need to replace more than a cup of it, then you may want to seek out a combination of something else. So you would combine 1 cup of mashed overripe bananas with a few tablespoons of water and puree it in a blender until it's smooth, adding water as needed to get a smooth consistency. But like I said, you can mash this by hand if you'd rather. Apples. You can use applesauce. You can use pre-bought applesauce. Or if you'd like to make your own applesauce, you can do this by peeling and coring apples, placing them in a pan with about 1 inch of water and simmering them while covered until they become soft, which should take about 20 minutes, and then mash the cooked apples or run them through a food processor. So those are the ones I have for you. Hopefully that is helpful. I know it sounds a little bit complicated. Have no fear. I will be writing a blog in the near future giving you some exact recipes that you could try out. I myself have made raw pie crusts, which are sweet, out of nuts and dates, and they're delicious. I've actually made some raw pies that were all fruit sweetened. I've done bonbons out of dates and nuts in a food processor with some other ingredients, coconut, sometimes cacao powder, make chocolatey ones. Goodness, I've done more than that. What else? Oh, make a vegan milkshake or even a vegan ice cream by doing smoothies the way I do them, but by making them super thick. The way I do smoothies is I will use frozen fruit and sometimes fresh also if I want to, along with some vegan milk in a blender. So if you use just enough vegan milk in with the frozen and fresh, if you like, fruit, and blend that, it will be so thick that it's like an ice cream. You can also do that. You can also make things like chocolate ice cream. This way, also using, well, I guess the way I know how to do it, you would be making like a chocolate fruity one. But banana is something that blends well with chocolate. I've done a berry chocolate one in the past that was very good. So I'm going to put those recipes in this blog post along with some others that I find online to share with you. So the best way to make sure that you get that is to go to Google and to add yourself to my circle. I guess that's what it's called. And that way it's like subscribing. Once the blog post is released, it'll pop up in your newsfeed. So I will put the blog address at the end of this video. Be well.